like to do. And not on a city computer.
I know. Thank you for reminding us all about behaving well.
Couldn't help myself.
HR yet.
I know, right?
Oh,
All right, I think we should be good to go.
Okay,
Okay.
there we are.
All right, this is calling to order. This is legislative committee meeting for the city of Salem for July 10th, 2026. I'm Judy Hoy, I'm the mayor.
Deanna Gwen, city councilor.
Vanessa Nordic, city councilor.
And Dr. Urban M. Brown, City Councilor.
Great. All right, that takes care of the welcome and call to order, right? Discussion. Are Mark and Terry both here? Looks like, yep.
Yes.
Good. Go ahead, guys.
Hello, everybody. It's good to see all you.
Good to see you.
So we're right now in DC. It's been kind of a weird month of June, July. The Congress actually, the House actually adjourned a full week and a half in advance of when they were supposed to adjourn for the July 4th recess due to an inability to actually move certain pieces of legislation to the floor. The majority is having some internal disputes that are making it challenging for them to kind of actually move legislation, which is something you're going to have to hopefully deal with before heading in here to July, because we're in the process right now of trying to move appropriations bills in order to fund the government. There still is plenty of time in some ways right now, in that the current fiscal year does not end until the end of September. But if you start to actually add up the number of legislative weeks that remain between now and then, I think with both in session, we only have 5 legislative weeks. So it's somewhere in the neighborhood of around 20 days that they're scheduled to be in session between now and the end of the fiscal year in order to actually finish up all 12 appropriations bills, or do some combination in order to make sure that happens, get the government funded, or do some kind of continuing resolution going forward. And there are a lot of kind of challenges with that really kind of in general. So things seem to kind of be moving beforehand, but there have been some hiccups with regard to that, and they've slowed down. I don't believe right now that we're going to be in danger of any kind of government shutdown. I think they'll probably do a continuing resolution, or to just kind of probably kick things until after the election. But that's kind of really the main thing that's been happening and moving, or one of the main things that's been happening and moving. The city has several kind of priorities that are still alive in those bills, either the House or the Senate. And yeah, we're kind of that's been really kind of the biggest thing that's been happening in Congress, and it's not really been happening because they've adjourned for most of the time since we kind of last talked. Terry, do you have anything to add to that?
No, that's really covers it. It's as Mark alluded to, the majority back here is having a very difficult time moving anything. They're really stuck, and it's hard to know how they're going to sort that out. There's rumors that they are going to find ways to appease the president and start to move the floor, open the floor back up after they return from recess, but it's hard to know how they're going to move forward at the moment. So it's really a stay tuned sort of situation, and not because we don't know, but I think because the leadership in the House doesn't know.
And just for clarity, Mark and Terry, it's been a while since we've met, and so I was scrambling around trying to remember those city priorities that are in budgets right now. So I'm just going to share, and you guys can edit me. But really quick, we were successful with both of our appropriations requests. Both of them are currently sitting in this process. So that's why it matters to Salem. We were asking for 1.8 million for Willamette Valley EOC. There is a 581,000 earmark in the FEMA DHS appropriation. So that's good to know. It's nice that our folks are really pushing Salem priorities and are being successful. And then the second one, there's Brian Carrera who wants to join right as I'm talking about a fire priority. And then the second one is this River Road hillside stabilization. And just really quick, you might remember our efforts in the past have been about building a wall to keep the hill up. We now have a new and innovative approach about actually injecting things into the hill to keep it up. And people are interested in funding that innovation. It's a lot less expensive than almost, I think, probably a $30 million retaining wall. So what we asked for was about 2.18 million to design. And I can't remember, Mark, Terry, do you recall how we ended up on an appropriation request for that? We asked for 2.18. I don't think all of that got into THUD, but do you remember?
I am pulling that up right now as we speak.
Saying we're racing toward it. Let's see.
So the good news is lots of support for our priorities at the federal level. And now we wait and see how these budgets come to pass.
It is opening if you want to give us just 1 second. Let's see, Salem.
While we're waiting, I'll just also add, we got other good news this week. There's this, it's really complicated, so I'm gonna try my best and then they will fix me. There's this thing called the Water Resource Development Act, I think.
That's correct.
WRDA is its favorite name. So you can just walk around and toss the name WRDA and you can be cool in certain circles. There is a $75 million placeholder in that bill for Salem. And the way I make sense of this, and you'll laugh and correct me, but it's kind of like having a home equity line of credit or something. It's like the federal government is willing to give us up to 75 million for water resource projects sometime over the next whatever period of time. We have to come up with things that compete for that dollar amount, but they're holding that for us. And that's pretty cool. That's a lot of great things that could be done. Do you, Mark, Terry, you want to make that sound more intelligent, or is that good enough for now?
No, I mean, I think that's basically right. This is an authorization rather than an appropriation. And the way this bill goes, the money that's there is not, it's not real money, and it's not that the fact that it goes into law that money just directly goes to the city of Salem. But what it does, like Courtney said, it makes us eligible to be able to seek that money if we go forward with a request. So we'll have to go back to our delegation and have them request money for a project that would tap into that money, as Courtney mentioned. But that gives us a different route to go after that. We'd be going after it in the Energy and Water Appropriations Bill, which is not one that the city would normally be looking after money in, which is good. It takes us out of Transportation HUD, which is a very challenging bill because we have a lot of needs that are in transportation, housing, or the Economic Development Initiative account, which is in there, which is kind of a catch-all for a lot of other stuff we might want to do as a city. Takes us out of the Interior bill, which is also a very crowded bill to work in, and gives us a separate lane, which just I think is very helpful, increases our chance of success of actually getting money for these sorts of projects.
The question is, what is this again called? It's WRDA, or Water Resource Development.
Which is the Water Resources Development Act.
Thank you.
And this is a bill that typically passes every 2 years. And yeah, and this is the one that's moving right now. It usually moves in a bipartisan way, and they were close right before a recent recess of actually bringing it up in. I mean, they actually were going to mark it up in the House in committee the week before the July 4th recess, but when the speaker then canceled votes for an entire week and a half, and took them into recess early, it took that off the table. So it should be coming back here within the 2 weeks that they're in session in July. That should move through the House. Senator Merkley's on the committee in the Senate. Again, this is usually a very bipartisan thing. I would expect this bill to pass and sign into law, even with the weirdness of Congress right now.
And this funding source typically pays for water infrastructure projects. So, those are really expensive projects. And so we're really lucky to have this in. Did you have a-
Well, my question was, if the drawdown happens, and would part of that funding would we be able to use part of that to fix those issues with the filter system and all that, or would that be different funding?
We may focus on the pipe infrastructure from
Right.
Garen to the rest of our system. We may focus on some of those bigger things that we've had challenges with. It's also true that as long as we're talking about water and infrastructure, it's also true that there's a BRIC grant application on council agenda for Monday night, which is to replace the access bridge to Garen Island. We've tried before and we've been learning a lot about how to do that application better. And so we're hopeful that will happen this year. And I know BRIC has something to do with infrastructure.
Rick, I forget the acronym, but yeah, it is.
Building resilient infrastructure and communities.
Mark for 200 points. Thank you, Mark. I think Julie had.
I have a question too about this word of funding and what it can be used for. So there is developable land in Salem, but there's no current water infrastructure. This is particularly true in my ward. I've met with residents in South Salem who are sitting on pieces of property that they would love to develop, but the cost of bringing the water to this completely undeveloped area is prohibitively expensive. So it's a real challenge for development. Development will basically never happen unless we extend the water infrastructure in places like South Salem. And I'm sure other councilors can speak to this problem in their own wards, but I know for a fact from talking to homeowners who own acres and acres in the South Salem Hills, like, I would love to develop this property, but I cannot afford to bring all this pipeline in. Is this something the city can do? I'm like, we don't have the money for that. Or do we? So I'm just curious, would we be able to do that? Because that could unlock some land that people are interested in developing and help with our housing shortage.
Yes, we have access to federal dollars. We need to build the applications, right? The appropriations to make them competitive, right? So, but we have up to 75 million for the next couple of years. And so what we're doing next is there's a backlog of infrastructure, as you just noted.
Yeah.
So what we're doing next is prioritizing those infrastructure fix and then pitching them to hopefully be successful to spend down that 75 million sitting in the space, if it passes. It hasn't yet passed.
Correct, it is not.
But that's just context to, why these budgets are important is because we have placeholders in a bunch of different spaces. And so that's our interest and why we have federal lobbyists to help us with everything.
So obviously the bill's not passed, so I'm not going to talk to them about it yet.
Is that
Sorry, go
drinking-
ahead. Go ahead.
Yes, drinking water for
Is that drinking
residential
water
property.
infrastructure? we need?
Yeah.
Got it, okay.
Okay, so did you find a number, Terry, to clear up the?
So the
River-
request was made in the, correct me if I'm wrong on this, Terry. The request was made by Senators Wyden and Merkley in the Senate for the whole amount. Their T-HUD bill is not moved yet. So we're alive and active in that they have made the request. We don't know if it's actually in the bill or not.
Okay,
That is
Great.
for hillside improvement.
perfect.
Correct, yeah.
Thank you so much for the update. Is there anything else on the federal side that anyone wants?
The only other thing I will just kind of flag, and there will be a very detailed memo, which is going to be coming from us that will be going out on Monday, is there was some comprehensive housing legislation which passed Congress. it also has been weird because even though it's bipartisan, the president then decided that he would not sign the bill.
Even though they had
It
a
was
stage set up in in the Capitol and everyone was going to the ceremony for him to sign it.
correct. Like literally members of Congress walked into the ceremony to sign it just to realize that the president, like 30 minutes beforehand, had pulled the plug on that and decided he was not going to actually sign it and was not there. So it was very weird. That's just been sitting out there for a while. If assuming that no action is taken or anything weird happens, that will become law on Saturday night. Is that correct?
Midnight tonight.
Midnight tonight.
So long as he doesn't veto it before midnight tonight, it automatically becomes law, which all indications are that he is not going to veto it. However, it's difficult to sometimes.
He's often up and about it at night.
You never know when at 11:50 what he may choose to
Oh,
do.
God.
And this is, you know, the most comprehensive housing bill in the last, you know, generation or more. So we'll have quite a comprehensive document for you that you can certainly read and take a look at, and we're happy to delve into different aspects of it or answer questions. We've been holding it mainly because we didn't want to get people excited about something in case he pulls the plug again.
Two things I'd like to add, just to make sure they're part of the record, that the priority in my mind would be the failing infrastructure between Guerin Island and here. And because we need to make sure we can get water to the structures that already exist. And the dam that needs to be likely replaced, which also provides all the water for what's already here. So those two thoughts. The only other thing, Mark, you said early on that things were struggling to move forward because of inner disputes. Can you describe for me an inner dispute?
Yeah, there is basically a wing of the. There's a piece of legislation dealing with elections and election reform that the president has really been pushing called the SAVE Act. And it's passed out of the House, and he's been trying to get it through the Senate. It does a whole bunch of different things. It does not have the support of 60 members of the U.S. Senate, so they're not able to actually move it through the Senate the way things currently are. The president has basically been insisting that he's not going to sign anything or do anything unless the SAVE Act passes. It does have ICE dollars in there. It also deals with vote by mail. It also deals with a whole bunch of other there are issues that people are concerned about, that even women who have changed their name due to marriage might be like purged from the voter rolls. There's a number of different kinds of things in there that I think are concerning to people. But that he will not sign anything or do anything until the SAVE Act passes, which means the Senate would need to, and this is what he's been encouraging them to do, to get rid of the filibuster and pass the bill with 51 votes. It's not 100% sure if they would have 51 votes to pass it by itself. They don't seem to have 51 votes to get rid of the filibuster, or 50 votes to get rid of the filibuster plus the vice president. So some people in the House have taken up the position that, well, that's where the president feels, we're also going to oppose everything moving through the House until the Senate passes the SAVE Act. Even though the president has told them not to do that, but he's also kind of saying two different things in how he's acting and what he has said. So there are several members who have been now blocking a lot of stuff from coming to the floor, and have even been blocking procedural things, such as there's a procedural thing called the rule, which most legislation that comes to the floor, if you're going to have amendments or things like that, has to have a rule. Those are typically just done in a partisan manner. Either they're done unanimously or they're done in a partisan manner. And if you're in the majority, you just pass it through, even if members of your party disagree with the underlying bill. They've taken down multiple rules, which is unheard of. That never happens if you have a majority. And given that they're not able to bring stuff to the floor, and they haven't been able to pass things when they've brought it to the floor because they've been voted down because the margins in Congress are are so narrow. So that seems to kind of really be the main hurdle and the main issue. There are some other disagreements, like anything that involves spending. You start off immediately with about like 10 Republicans who are just going to vote against it, period. Which means you have to do things in a bipartisan way. And if you do that, it creates some other difficulties with, I mean, you have to actually engage with the Democrats in this case or move something forward if you want an actual bipartisan result on the floor. So we saw similar things to this last Congress, and they would seem to kind of walk right up to the brink. And then the speaker at the end of the day would put forward a bill that could be supported in a bipartisan way or to end run some of these issues. But that was before the SAVE Act was kind of taking up as much oxygen in the room.
Wow, thank you for that context. Wow.
Yeah, it's not a great situation, and that is why they adjourned early. There's been rumors of how they might move forward once they come back, but we haven't seen anything concrete. It definitely sets up, if they can't resolve this somehow, it's going to be a very long next few months for them, because there's things that they have to get through the House floor, and the votes just are not there for this bill, the SAVE bill. And it's something that this small group of legislators and the president are just refusing to acknowledge.
Thank you, guys. Yep. If there's anything further, federal.
No, I think that's the
Get back to us
main
when-
thing.
I'm sorry, Mark, I assume y'all will get back to us on whether this bill passes with WRDA funding, because I think we're all interested in finding out whether and
Absolutely.
how we can use that funding.
Absolutely, and I'll write something up for you all as well, kind of laying out if this were to pass, like what the steps would be in order to taxes it, how we kind of need to go about doing that as well.
And it's just for expectation purposes. This is a several months away passage sort of situation.
Got it.
And even then, if it passes this year, we'd be looking at appropriations for next year would be kind of the timeline on that. But I'll write something up that I can get to you all, just so you have kind of a sense of like I said, of what the steps are and how things would work.
And also we have some subject matter expertise too on staff. They're just not here today, and so please don't take my shorthand way of understanding things to be the sum total of the experience that we have with these things. Jason Pulley is really a great advocate on water generally, and has I think he might have helped us put the pitch together for the WRDA anyway, so all good. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys. Moving on then to the state update.
All right, thanks, Madam Mayor, and counselors and staff. Today, I'm just going to touch real quick on the coming calendar. I'm going to talk about some meetings that we've had. We're going to look real quickly at some topics of interest. We'll talk a little bit about League of Cities, what they're looking at, and how we can coordinate with them. A brief little political update. There's nothing real earth-shattering in July of an election year, but we'll talk a little bit about that. And then finally, we'll transition into kind of the meat of our presentation today, which will be the projects and priorities that we're looking at going into 2027. So with that, looking at the interim calendar, we've got interim legislative days coming up September 8th through 10th. And as everybody knows, legislative days are kind of more important now that the legislature is into this annual mode, right? They didn't used to be much, but now they are really utilizing them to propel what legislative priorities there are. So we'll be there 8th through the 10th. There's a pre-session request deadline on September 11th of this year. And then of course, we'll have a general election November 3rd. We will have a revenue forecast right after that. Agencies have all submitted their budgets. We'll have a governor's recommended budget, which, you know, I used to say in the old days used to just be a big honking piece of paper that kind of gets thrown out the window as soon as the legislature starts. That being said, it definitely sets the framework and the tone for what the priorities are going to be. So we'll look for that around the 1st of December as well. And then another round of interim legislative days, December 1st through 3rd. And then finally a pre-session filing deadline on December 11th. So Those deadlines are important, but again, I want people to realize for strategic purposes and just for, how we want to go about some of our priorities, none of those are set in stone. Our legislators each have a certain amount of bills that they can do, a certain amount of priorities. We can get something going even in January or February if we don't make these deadlines. So, and as Francis and I do research and look at some of our top priorities, we will figure out strategically what the best way to start that, to start some of that legislation in motion will be. And I say that because oftentimes I don't like just putting stuff out there so people can look at it in down times. I'd much rather have our stuff drop when 2,000 other bills drop, right? People have their priorities, they focus on that. They don't just look at, oh, hey, how can I mess around with this? And give them 3 or 4 months to really start thinking about that. So unfortunately, that's how the legislature works. And when people know what's coming, they tend to, and if they don't like it, they tend to utilize that time for planning on how to defeat some things. So there's your calendar. Moving on to meetings, the House Interim Committee on Housing and Homelessness met, and the mayor and I and Jessica were there. And then the mayor went around and did some other meetings with Jessica as well. Do you want to touch on that, Mayor? I wasn't part of those meetings, but.
That was so long ago. There's a lot of water under the bridge since then, but it was a very effective time spent at the Capitol. And we had a little conference table meeting with
Rep Elmer?
yes.
Yeah.
That was it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, it was good, very good. Nice to see the Housing Authority at the table and others speaking up about a very difficult issue.
For sure. And one that's definitely going to be a priority in the legislative session.
And I'll just interject that it's been a while. And so this was an issue that you all heard about from Jessica last time this committee met. We prepared talking points, which are the second page of your packet. And so if you have the occasion, opportunity, this is the way we're talking about this issue. And thank you so much for your direction to make this a priority. So just want to make sure everybody has that.
And the great thing within these talking points, to Courtney's point, is these 3 kind of short narratives, right, that really illustrate the problem. They kind of define the problem and here's why we need help.
Yeah.
So I really like the way, and as the mayor and I heard all last session, that folks that have 3,000 issues facing them and aren't experts in every one of those issues really want to hear that narrative. They want to be able to tell that story. They want to understand quickly why it's relevant and why the need is there. So this is great. And as Francis and I put together this Capital District campaign, we'll be working on those narratives from our public safety entities, fire and police, and be able to tell those stories on why this is so important for the capital city.
Isn't it great to have a Francis?
It is. And a Jessica. I mean, I think that goes without saying, but we really do have a strong resource there, well respected in the housing community and just really on top of things. It's just been a blessing to work with Jessica and all our staff. You guys have heard me say that a million times. Courtney, I'm sorry.
I was just, Councilor Brown is asking for a copy of the materials, and so I'll just pop that. We have some on the table here, so I'll put that in your box. It's also, it would have been emailed out to members of the committee as well.
Is it in the
And I
calendar?
think it's probably on the calendar. So many ways. Okay, anyways.
Yeah, moving on.
I do have a question about the talking points. So it says at the end, if raised, Shaw does not have funds available to hire security in buildings. But there's nothing in the talking points that specifies, do we have a number? And if so, what is the revenue stream? Are we asking for general fund type dollars from the state? I mean, I think a lot of times, if I ever have sidebars of legislators, they want to know what pot of money I'm asking from.
So this is not really a fiscal ask.
Okay.
This is more of, well, actually, do you want to speak to it?
Just the difficulties in housing folks
Okay.
who are not healthy enough to control themselves and their living environment. And that creates levels of trauma, with staff having to deal with those folks and then being given an extended period of wait time before they can actually make a change. When that person may have invited 3 other people to live in that space. And there may be, regular drug visits and opportunities. And it's really hard on those who are trying hard to get well and be well and stay well. And so Housing Authority hasn't spoken up about this before until this time, as far as I'm aware. And it's important that they do that so that the state is aware of what we're dealing with. And I mean, turnover is insane. They can't keep staff. And it's not healthy for the folks, like I said, who are trying to get well.
So it's really more about protections for staff, less about asking for money. And sometimes I
But
think
you need money to hire the security staff. That's what I was asking.
It's not about security, it's about legislation that provides this living opportunity for folks without some form of accountability or ability to live in a healthy manner in that space, in that environment.
so while the presentation of the problem may invite, just hire security.
Yeah.
The answer is hiring security does not create opportunities for staff to advocate for having people leave the building that are not supposed to be there. They create squatter status, they create residency, and then staff are stuck. And the person who may have invited this person in is also stuck. And so this is more needing a systemic response to have more protections for staff that are working in this field. And it was very hard I recall the first time we talked about this issue here, it was very hard for Jessica to talk about this because Housing Authority staff are doing this work because they believe in the power of transformation. They're doing this work because this often is a last resort for the people they're trying to work with and help. And so it's just a really big pivot for staff to be asking for help and seeking some support from the legislature to have more autonomy, authority in these environments. So that's why certainly as you noted, right, when you present this problem, we want to help and we want to hire security to help, but the underlying law would render security also helpless. So that's why this is here, is just it came up, I think, 2 legislative meetings ago, and you all were very supportive of having some advocacy on it. We've prepared the talking points, we've started that advocacy, and we wanted to make sure, in full transparency, that you all had access to the same information and talking points. Okay, so there is that. Sorry to interrupt. You were doing such a good job.
No problem. I can get quick, as you guys know. No, it was great. It was also my first time at official hearing in the new hearing rooms, which I don't know if anybody hasn't been down there yet. They are beautiful, but it's very different. It's kind of much more seems more federal-like to me than our cozy little conference rooms, our cozy.
Less night court.
Yes, it feels more formal. You're way far away from the electeds in the dais, but it is gorgeous. So it'll be interesting to see how they worked out. And I also noticed that they have little trapdoors to where they can get to the hearing rooms without having to go through, the lobbyists who are always lurking, waiting for them to get in what we call the gauntlet and and getting by so we can have an extra crack at talking to folks.
Do they reduce the capacity of the rooms?
Yeah, they're huge rooms, but there's not a ton of seating. So if anybody remembers hearing room 50, which was kind of the main room in the basement, it's kind of like that same style of seating, about the same capacity. I would venture to say there's a little bit more, with the exception of hearing room F and hearing room A, which are bigger on the outsides of the upstairs.
It's like they're expecting more interpretive dance, because there's a lot of space between the presenters.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
a lot of room. for activities.
it was a whole lot of room. I was like, oh wow, this is nice. It's beautiful and I'm glad it's done. because you guys have heard my frustrations over the last 8 years between the pandemic and between construction. It really creates a barrier to building relationships, and this is a relationship business. So it's really been a challenge over the last, but now we finally got it. And I think, you know, Senator Courtney's vision, I think, is finally coming to fruition. So it'll be nice to see a full session with everybody in there. Full access to the building should be great. Okay, we met with the treasurer, the state treasurer. That was a good meeting. You know, she was in a hurry, about 15, 20 minutes late. That's fine. I mean, I think the goal and the objective was to say, hey, we're here, we're a partner, we're a government right in, you know, your backyard. Since your office is here, and whatever you need, we will continue those discussions. I thought that was a good meeting. And then next, we had quick meetings, just touching base with all the Salem delegation about the lawsuit and the drawdown in Detroit. So heard from everybody with the exception of Representative Anderson, had a nice conversation with Senator Girard about it. Obviously his concerns and with the city of Turner. That was great. Everybody responded. Everybody was very thankful for the heads up. So, and I know Terry and Mark did that at the federal level as well. Again, those are just small things that you can do that build trust with our delegation and our elected officials. So that was good. Topics of interest. We know going into the 27 session, transportation. So Julie's going to be really busy. Transportation is going to be huge. They didn't get their, you know, their big package done in 25. The last big transportation package was 2017. So that'll be priority number one. And we've certainly got our work cut out for us there. But again, we're on top of it. Campaign finance reform. That'll be interesting to see how that plays out in the future. Housing, another big one. The revenue forecast did show that revenues were up by about 345 million. But the state is also expecting slow growth, no kicker rebate, and then inflation obviously is an issue for consumers. So we'll keep an eye on that. Education reforms, we've got a governor's race coming up. Education is obviously going to be key. That awareness will be made by the non-incumbent, obviously, because Oregon is not doing very well in terms of rank with the other states. And something's really got to be done or looked at it within the education world. So let's plan on a lot of education stuff as well. Again, I'm just talking not so much Salem, but overall what the priorities are going into the legislature. League of Cities currently has their ballot out, right? Which members are responding and looking. They will finalize that at their annual meeting. Yeah.
You may not see, but we know that the league has asked for that input, and annually we bring a recommendation forward and the full ballot to you. And we will do that August 28th, which is our next.
I'll be out.
Okay,
We have quorum for that because I will be on vacation overseas.
we haven't yet established whether we will or not, and we can certainly change it. The deadline for the league feedback is September 25. So we have plenty of time.
Okay.
That's what I'm trying to convey. Plenty of time.
Right.
And so
And if
if,
we push back, that would be helpful for Francis and research.
Right.
That'd be awesome.
so if the August, we'll do a poll and see who's around. If August 28th doesn't work, we can flex to an maybe early September date. We'll ask later. Okay,
The issues they're looking at, Government Ethics Commission. Obviously, you guys maybe saw the paper this morning. What's going on with OGEC, one of Nikki's favorite agencies. I say that jokingly because every time she calls to get an opinion, depends on who you talk to on what the opinion is. So you guys have been through that.
What was in the paper this morning?
Just an article about,
the league's taking me.
yeah. Like the executive director and the inconsistencies and the increase of that, but no increase in actual fines. So it's tricky stuff. Obviously, the league's looking at it. Federal preemptions, water rights, housing, infrastructure, labor and public safety. We talked about all that. The quick little political, in terms of meetings going back, I will be going to Bend next week for a fundraiser with Senator Broadman. Why that's important? He's the chair of revenue. So I want to get his input on how we approach this capital district in terms of what should we do to launch? Should we lay low? What are his thoughts on it since he's chairing that committee? So I'm looking forward to that meeting. And then finally, also had a good conversation with Danny Moran, who is the governor's new legislative director, since Bob Livingston retired. So Danny's been great so far. They did that handoff. I met with both Bob and Danny about 2 months ago or so. So I'm looking forward to working with him. Like we talked about, he's new. He's inexperienced in this role, but to me, that's an opportunity, right? It's like a nice fresh whiteboard that we can kind of educate and make sure he's aware of our issues. So looking forward to that. I'll report on how that meeting goes with Broadman next time we talk. Political update. I think I've said to everybody, it'll be no shock. I don't see much movement on either the Senate side or the House side, right? I think we'll continue to see kind of super majorities on both sides. And even though that maybe, how it works, super majorities are hard environments to work within, right? You don't have a lot of give and take. You don't have a lot of bend. There's not a lot of leverage from a minority party. So you really have to dial in with leadership. You usually dial in with leadership. That's obviously a strategy. But when the House or the Senate are closer, you can work a little bit more and get some compromise. There's really only 3 races in the Senate. One of them is our own here in Salem. Don't see much competition there. An open seat down and around where Representative Senator Golden is. That seat has gone Democrat. That seat has gone Republican in the past. He was able to win without even raising money. He didn't take any real campaign dollars. But it'll be interesting to see. That'll be a huge focus for Senator Starr and the Republicans down there, because that has been a Republican seat recently. But just not much activity, maybe 4 or 5 competitive seats. There's probably a pickup with our former counselor, Stapleton, in the Kaiser seat, which is held by Thatcher now. That'll be a close race with Tracy Kramer, who has also won on the House side. But other than that, not a lot of real competitive races, much like at the national level. So yeah, that'll be interesting. So that's the politics of that. I've heard rumblings that there may be a shakeup in leadership on the House side. We won't know. And that's all internal politics, right? We won't know until after the election, and then both chambers usually get together and elect their leadership going into the next legislative session. So we'll keep an ear to the ground on that. And with that, Courtney, why don't we just transition into our
I do have some
projects?
questions.
Yeah.
Homeless sheltering funding. I know the governor's done a nice job of creating more of like a sheltering network and funding that flows directly from the state to mostly nonprofit providers who have really kind of picked up the torch. The city of Salem invested some one-time funding in homeless shelters and helped get a lot of people off the streets once and for all. But a lot of our biggest shelters in town, including our navigation center, we don't actually pay for any of the staffing there. Community Action Agency has a grant from the state, so they provide all the case management services for the 75 beds, which are regularly full. The same is true for some other shelters in town. So it's a funding priority that isn't money that comes to us. It goes directly to the people who are well trained at providing it. So I want to know if you know, do they intend on continuing that funding level, lowering it, increasing it? And have you heard anything one way or the other about sheltering funding from the state?
Yeah, that's a great question. I haven't heard much, but that's not to say that, those partners that you're talking about that we collaborate with aren't in there every day. So you're probably closer to it than I am. That being said, it's always difficult, right? It's like, hey, we really appreciate the capital investment in these navigation center or sobering center, et cetera. But where's the operations going to come, right? After a certain amount of time. So I think that's just a classic, it's just classic. We got to go in and fight for those dollars. We have to really utilize those relationships that we do have in terms of collaboration and how can we cooperate and help them. So
because it's money we don't have to spend.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah,
and it gives us something our residents want, which is moving people off the streets into shelter, out of harm's way. So I mean, I think I really want to know what that looks like. And I know sometimes funding formula changes, like, we're gonna do more in this area, and it might impact Salem and help other communities more. I have no idea. There's there's too many possible scenarios.
Yeah, and I think we have a little bit of I would characterize it as we're going to see how this plays out because we do have a contested governor's race, right?
Yes.
Now, you guys have heard me say a million times, it's a math problem for Republicans. It's going to be very hard. But the nice thing that we do get out of this in terms of policy is somebody from this side is going to push a certain way on homelessness and public safety, et cetera. And that oftentimes forces an incumbent to really say, okay, here's my policy positions and here's what I'm going to promise going in. And as I've told everybody around this table, this is a critical session for a governor that will be their second term. It's that first term, and then that's kind of it, because you're a lame duck on the way out, right? On your second go around in the legislature. So I'm hoping that campaign kind of forces those issues to become paramount, and we're going to see some really concrete policies come out of both camps. And again, we got to get strategic about, okay, who's going to win this thing, who isn't, and what is that messaging going to be, and what is that policy going to look like? And then we got to hold them accountable to that going in. We certainly know where the governor's stance has been, but we need to provide more results, and we need to provide more resources. So
Great. The only other question / comment I want to make, transportation funding is huge. I mean, and I know there are, mega $1 million projects on the line here, but buried in those line items of the ODOT budget, I would love to see a line item that is specific to the concerns that cities like ours raise, which is having security fencing and adequate, patrols of ODOT properties like under our Center Street Bridge. It's something the entire council has expressed concern about. And if ODOT has the money in its budget to actually put boulder, I prefer boulders because they look more natural than having security fencing, aesthetics do matter. And besides, security fencing can be destroyed. Boulders, so much. So although it's certainly not the most important thing in our transportation budget, and we depend heavily on the state transportation budget for our infrastructure, to me, this is a one line item thing. I can help a lot of cities with some of the challenging areas in our area. So I don't know how you weave that into a conversation when there's so many other things that take up a lot of oxygen in the room, but I know it's one of the top concerns that we've been getting as councilors.
yeah, I can imagine you hear about it every day. So
Just something to think about when we put together whatever our approach is to the transportation funding.
On the homelessness issue, just to be sure everyone knows, pragmatically, we do have room in the platform to advocate for support of bills that might appear during the session that would continue funding for these critical services. So just everyone to have awareness, we are pragmatically positioned to support those kinds of pieces of legislation. Okay, so, sorry.
And a final thought on that. I mean, when again, I keep talking about Francis and I putting together a strategic plan specifically for the Capital District. But as we do this stakeholder inventory, it really kind of figure out what relationships you guys have. I'm sure you all have decent relationships with our delegation. But as we know those, then those are the kind of opportunities that I think it's like, oh, that'll be awesome if Councilor so-and-so can call. We're going to have 2 former city councilors in the legislative process. It's like, let's take advantage of those relationships for exactly that type of advocacy that says, hey, I'm getting all these calls from my constituents. What can the state do? That ODOT example under bridges is a prime one to use, right? Another one of those good narratives that say, hey, we understand it. We see it too, but it's not our responsibility and it's not our fund. We don't have any funding to go clean that stuff up. We're just waiting on ODOT, right?
Right.
So anyway, I keep talking about stakeholder inventory, but how important that is. You guys are the ones with the relationships, and you guys are the ones hearing from your constituents all the time. So,
Councilor Brown has a question.
oh, I'm sorry, Councilor.
I just want to follow something that Assistant City Manager Bush said. What I have not heard yet, at least from the updates, whether it's federal or state, we do know that the SAVE Act has a lot of other things in it, and I think Mark and Terry mentioned that. But what we did not address is that there is an uptick when we look at ICE involvement. And so we did not discuss that because that's going to be overshadowing, because Stephen Miller would like to see 3,000 folks taken off the streets per day. And so that activity is going to ramp up. And so as we think about all the other broad things, we we didn't touch base on that. The governor does not address that whatsoever. And when we look at what the SOS put out today in regards to this administration firing those folks that are part of the voting commission, we know that this fall it's going to be a complete mess. And excuse my French, it's going to be a shit show. And so I just want us to be mindful that whether we're talking about, the 75 million that we could possibly get, or we're talking about what we can get with even transportation, we still got to look at the humanity component. The humanity component is that there is still a movement that is trying to move people away. And that is what I think, the city needs to do a better job when it comes to focusing on. And so I'm bringing that into the space because I think we have to be mindful of the demographics that are still being impacted by what we're not talking about.
Thank you, Councilor Brown. And just on a pragmatic front, when council passed the emergency declaration regarding impact of immigration enforcement activities on our communities, council included some statements about what we could or should be doing with regard to advocacy. And those statements are included in the platform from which we can advocate. So that was approved by council. I think it was December 8th. And so that is that is a place from which we can all speak with confidence on behalf of the city.
Thank
and
you.
I think you all might want to have another copy of that in your emails. So we'll make sure to get that out to you guys when the meeting is finished.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I want to take a moment to just notice that we have 3 minutes left in our time together, and we are not in a hurry on the project priorities. So if it is okay with you, I'd like to just notice that you have a list of priorities in your packet. And what I would like you to do, if you have a moment over the next however long it is before we have a chance to get back together, what I'd like you to do is have confidence that you have information you need to help staff understand the priorities you'd like these to be listed in. So right now, the numbers may not mean anything to you, but we have, I don't remember if we have 6 ideas. 6 ideas. We expect there's a sleeper 7 that might come forward. Parks is working on some estimates for 2 pedestrian bridges that would be in Bush Park and Woodmansee Park. Thank you. These are bridges that are failing and we would like to replace them. So what I want to just notice is that we have almost 7 ideas. I'm not asking you to make decision today. I will need decision next time we get together because we need to be ready to go right around September 11, 12 is when we would like to be prepared, fully prepared. So what you'll see is we have a standing portfolio of options. We need your guidance. We're better with fewer priorities than we are with as many as 7.
Is there a target number?
It's easier for us, like especially with the capital district going forward, if it's easier, that's a big ask and it's very, very important. So far, we understand it to be the most important priority for the last couple of years for the city and the community, but we could probably do that and something that would be a capital ask. If you have other priorities, we can certainly try to manage those as well, but fewer is better because sometimes we notice if folks have a chance to really support one priority, they feel like they've done their part for Salem, and that would make it harder for us to really get this capital district movement. So you'll notice a brief narrative describing the capital district ask. When we next get together, we'll have full campaign materials for you, but this is just the beginning of the narrative. You'll see that we're trying to get more funding for Willamette Valley Communication Center. This is a new building that we're trying to get, and it works well with the federal ask. You'll also see Peace Plaza is here. That's a perennial ask, but it may not be a priority for you this year. You'll also see Echo Earth restoration. This is a community priority. We're asking you to consider whether it should be on our platform. Buildable lands inventory. This is sort of required work that the state asks us to do, and we would be looking for some financial support to be able to deliver that because our capacity is really constrained. So, and then something about these two bridges in the parks.
So that would be 6 then, not 7.
You're right. Thank you so much for counting. So 6 ideas before you. It would be best, to your point, Mayor Hoy, if we had fewer than 6. It's easier, it's always easier for people to be able to count on their hand. But we'll leave you with that. If you have questions about any of these priorities, please let us know. We'll try to come to some decision or guidance from you when we next get together.
I've just thrown it out there, but the Peace Plaza and the Eco Earth seem much lower in terms of priority.
Okay.
I agree.
They don't seem to go away. It's odd to me, but that's, I mean, maybe something community driven would be a better fit for projects like those.
Okay. So I'm hearing that from you, Mayor Hoy.
I agree.
I'm hearing,
I agree
I'm
as
seeing
well.
some nodding. Okay, great. So, thank you for that input. Maybe what we'll do is just try to focus on the Capital District and the Communications Center for now. Is that?
And the land inventory.
And the land
I think that's a
inventory.
great idea.
Good.
I think we're overdue for the reasons stated. We're so different than the last time this inventory was done 10 years ago. So I think that makes sense.
Good.
I certainly understand the desire to limit it. I am wondering what with the anticipated drawdown, should we, I mean, I'm hopeful that we won't need to go to the state for any emergency funding for the drawdown, but should we, because I'm just asking strategically, we don't need to make any decisions today. But if we have it on this, I don't even know what we would ask for, but I'm just trying to prevent us being in an emergency situation where we're talking to the E-board and they're like, did you fail to prepare for this? Why are you just now coming to us? I don't know, because this is, water infrastructure. I have this much professional experience in. I don't know whether this is the appropriate funding mechanism, but I see this potential tsunami coming, very filthy water coming our way. And I'm just wondering, should we start preempting that possibility, start priming that pump, if you'll forgive the expression?
It's a good question.
I don't know, just throwing it out there.
It's a good question, and I think that gives staff some direction to work with our public works folks to assess the situation. Just as it is already an emergency, the council enacted an emergency declaration. And the city has taken some emergency measures to create some more aquifer storage and recovery so that we have a more resilient water system. The concern right now, because we've done those great projects early, the concern right now is just about the sustainability of the residential growth that we anticipate and the economic growth that we need. That is the constraint right now. We can get through a one season perhaps, but it's the longer term constraint to the water supply that is our concern now. So I can certainly ask those questions and perhaps have another project idea for you developed when we get together next. Thank you. Good, okay. Oh, I don't know.
Councilor Brown maybe had a comment or? Okay.
All right.
I got a final comment, sweep the case there on your water bottle. Go Scots. Proud of my high school.
Well, mine too.
All right.
I graduated.
You graduated?
Yeah, barely.
You graduated, question mark, not graduated from fair question. You never know. There's no GED requirement to be a lobbyist. I mean, technically, there's no educational requirement at all.
There isn't. There
Uh-huh.
really isn't.
See? That's right.
And, yeah.
Did you guys have anything you wanted to bring to the table? Okay.
We will poll for your availability and find the best next time for us to get together, and our staff are prepared to deliver the project priorities. We'll look into whether there's any water capacity priority we can include. And then we are gonna have campaign materials for you when we next get together about payment in the. Good.
Thank you, everyone. We are adjourned. Thank you so much, everybody.
Yeah.
Bye.